Well, hello there. So, I'm not really sure exactly everything that I'm going to talk about. Maybe I'll pull some cards. Don't even have any near me. Um, but I have been working through this, really base stuff. And if you had seen some of my most recent previous videos, I talked about having a reading that told me that there was a gift for me in my melancholy. And I said how I was trying not to move through my melancholy really fast. I was trying to kind of savor it. And there were so many gifts for me in that process. And I filmed during some of that process, like for a few days there. 4 different days, I think, of that process. I filmed in maybe even two more of those, four, five, six different videos. Like the last 6 videos, I think I would say, were me in that kind of space. So although I had my spiritual wisdoms to share, some of the conclusions that I was making about myself and my own journey were not from the biggest picture view that I have access to now. So just bear that in mind as we go forward if I decide to share something and it seems contradictory. Um, if you had asked a question about it, then I'll answer, but, I'm just going to move on as if who cares. I'm allowed to, I'm allowed to make mistakes just like I say you guys are, And so this kind of going down into those melancholy kind of places, the fruit it bared is just this coming down to that level of the root of where some of these patterns that I had from dealing in my childhood wounds had come from. And these were things that I've worked on for years, at certain layer, and never got to the root because it just simply wasn't time, right? Like if I had pulled this stuff up from the root way back when, then I definitely would have jumped a bunch of timelines and not been on the timelines I needed to be on to clear up and interact in certain ways and do this and that, So I'm totally in tune with the divine orchestration and understanding of that bigger picture view of there's not really any room for me to say, oh, I suffered for so long needlessly, or I was clueless, or I'm so embarrassed that I operated this way because of that wound. And it's no, actually, I'm kind of on that liberation high, right? It's oh, now I totally see and I get it. And I see it was perfect. And I'm not saying I have the biggest picture view even of a lot of things yet, but on that particular thing I do. And one of the key things that I unraveled most recently about my childhood wounding, I had already really kind of dug into my people-pleasing tendencies and things like that. And I think there was many years ago now, I even talked about being willing to overlook people's shadow. Oh no, that's not what it was. Years ago, I remember making a video where I talked about how I kind of like to hang with people who were in their shadow, because if it was apparent to me, then I felt safe. So that was an interesting thing to remember when I was unraveling this whole thing about how I was operating, my coping mechanisms that I developed in order to navigate life based on the childhood that I had. And so I had a mother who, basically both mother and father were very manipulative. And I don't think that they were intending necessarily. My father may have intended to at times. My mother, it's just the nature of how she operates, and I don't know how conscious she is of it, even though she's been made conscious of it many times as she triggers people, or people, give her feedback saying they don't like it. Whatever. But dealing with that as a child, one of the things that I did to adapt was focus in on meeting her needs so that I would become worthy of whatever breadcrumb of attention I could get, right? But the other thing that I hadn't really focused in on that I realized about that was because both of my parents were actually manipulative, and maybe that ranges from just being coercive about trying to get me to do what I was supposed to do, but also being blatantly lied to, you know. Here's just one random example, which I think I've used in a video before, which was like when my father told us that our grandparents on my mother's side were dead and we would never see them again. And then my mom, pretty much in the same day, snuck us on the city bus to go visit them. And that might have been around the time she was trying to get away. So anyway, and then like another time when my dad was like supposed to be dropping us back off to my mother, and he started to pull away and the car doors open and I start screaming and he stops the car, it's going with the car door open and my mother's on the street screaming, because he's pulling away with us. And he says, "You can get out, but you'll never see me again." And it's like, so even before these particular times, there was living with this man. And so there were all kinds of things that went on that were manipulations, coercions, lies. And so when this happened with, one of my main caregivers, there was a coping mechanism put in place for dealing with the fact that I depend on these people, and these people are not on the up and up. For whatever the reason these people are doing it, I am being manipulated. I am being coerced. I am being told something that I blatantly know isn't true. And of course, I'm very intuitive, and I was back then too, but I did have to shut it down because of this. That was one of the things I did to cope with it. But the other thing I did was when it came to love, when it came to someone I deemed that I love, I put on blinders to manipulation and coercion and boundary breaking. So while any random stranger or person who was an acquaintance could find me intimidating and know that they really couldn't fuck with me because I was not going to take it, other people who maybe I was in a relationship with, who I deemed someone I love, could absolutely violate my boundaries or manipulate me or harm me abusively in some way, and I would turn a blind eye to it over and over and over and over and over again. So there was this hypersensitivity to pleasing the other and a hyposensitivity to the abuse of the other going on for me in my coping mechanisms from growing up that way. So this, this hyposensitivity to manipulation, coercion, and boundary breaking obviously was the reason that I could stay in relationships that weren't good for me for so long. And that's not just with boyfriends, but family members as well. And the funny thing about it is, I think the way that it hid was because when I did find myself on this spiritual journey, and I did ascend up into my upper chakras, which was before I started doing shadow work, I knew, and I was already in touch with Christ consciousness. And Christ consciousness is forgiving. Christ consciousness and the balancing of energy doesn't hold grudges and doesn't hold judgments against people who would manipulate or break boundaries or whatever, right? So from my spiritual, knowledge, I figured there was nothing to look at there. It didn't throw a flag for me to say, hey, wait a minute. Where I was brought around to it was when I was finally shown, hey, you matter too. You have to look out for yourself too. Spirit's telling me this, like, for after a while, and I was like, oh yeah, I see what you're saying. But then there was eventually the question of like, well, why do you have to tell me? Why isn't there something in me that says, hey, this isn't okay? Like I said to Spirit, where's the natural thing in me that would say, And then that's when I realized, oh shit, I numbed it out. I dulled it out so that I could, cope with what was going on in the household that I was growing up in. And it hid there because spiritually, that was the standpoint you want to be in anyway, where it doesn't have a charge. It doesn't emotionally, you move on from harm or hurt that people have done to you without it emotionally affecting you. That is ideal. But it was hiding behind that for me. And it wasn't like I was actively, knowingly bypassing it. But it was being bypassed because of my spiritual knowledge, because there was nothing indicating to me that, like, it was literally numbed out in me. Like there was a mechanism in me that automatically numbed out any feelings about someone I love wronging me. So it was my logical mind that would know, okay, this isn't right. And I couldn't get a feeling going about it. I mean, I really couldn't. And it took a while for me to kind of come around to the place where I was like, oh, okay, so that's an issue. Where is that? And then when I started digging in that place in me, it all unraveled. And then I could see on the other side of it, with that balanced out, I'm like, oh, okay, I see that I needed to be in that for a while. And I kind of see how it served me in different places where there were people who were doing certain things, like gossiping behind my back, being nice to my face, and I would know it. And I wouldn't have a feeling about it. And it was always weird to me because I would be like, well, I don't know why, but I don't feel mad or bad or anything. So now looking back, I'm like, well, that's cool because I never started anything with them. I never got revenge or never even felt depressed or hurt by it. It was like it was nothing. So that coping mechanism was very effective. However, more ideally, now that I can handle myself in a mature manner, next time if I were to encounter somebody who was nice to my face and, not so nice under the surface or behind my back, I would act accordingly. And not that I would do much different, but I probably wouldn't go to their house for, to celebrate their birthday or something, I probably wouldn't take underhanded, invitations, and I probably wouldn't just take it when somebody, said something untoward or unfair or backhanded, what I mean? Those kind of compliments that aren't really compliments. I was immune to those. I mean, there's this part of me, and that's probably an egoic part that's kind of like, that's so hilarious. But also, I think my soul is laughing because my soul's kind of like, that is pretty funny. That you would be equipped with a coping mechanism that would make you like this little baby child that was so scared to feel hurt feelings by someone she deemed important to her, that she would just numb it out and it would never exist. So it took some work and willingness and being in that melancholy for a while. I had to kind of get it soupy, get those feelings kind of moistened up and ready to come out. And then so I could finally be present with them, because that's what we do. We acknowledge, validate, accept, and be present with the feelings. I had done all the other stuff, and the being present with the feelings was the thing that I really needed to let myself do, and that just took time. And it's like divine time, right? It's like I wasn't on a deadline. I was totally just needing to take the time because I had the time to take. That's what I'm here for. And there were little tidbits and nuances and things for me to realize about myself, about energy, about how other people are using that energy. And like anything, when you realize it in yourself and you're starting to heal it, you start to see it everywhere. Shit. So I started to see it in other people. I started to see other people in my life who are also hyposensitive to manipulation. And that was an interesting thing. And also there was a moment where I got like extremely averted to it as well. Where, it was like, it wasn't like I just came into balance. I first swung over to the other extreme. I mean, for me, it wasn't extreme, but it was a matter of like, I got triggered by my mother's, I'm going to call it lies recently. It was a lie because she had, my mother's wishy-washy. That's what she is. So I know logically not to trust anything she tells me because she'll probably change her mind. And she did this particular time, but it wasn't logical for me. I had swung in that wound that I was trying to bring up and kind of simmer in. I had swung over to the other extreme of being completely averted to people lying. And then she lied, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go now. Thanks, bye. So that was part of it too for me, though. Like, it got my attention. I was like, okay, I see. Because I've been on this extreme of it where it's like I'm immune to it, and then I've been on this extreme where I'm not immune to it, and I'm like hyper activated by it. And then I got to come and swing back into this neutrality on it. Like, oh, I see, I see where it served me, and I see why it isn't serving me anymore. And so I understand that it's a possibility, right? Because I don't want to go through life strongly reacting to people who are manipulative or lying. Like, that doesn't serve me either. But this part of me who was a child who had never been honored, I needed to rescue her, and I needed to be with her feelings about it. And now if I were to navigate that again, I already know, like, I'm a person who can love myself even if it did hurt. So if it hurts, it'll hurt, and I'll love myself through it. And if it doesn't hurt, it's okay, and I'll move on through it. You know what I mean? Like, there's a neutrality about it. It's like, okay, back and present with life and whatever life has to offer me again. Yay. Good stuff. One of the things that I've realized that I probably got wrong, and I don't know why it's important for me to mention this, but I'm going to. It's like the thing where I thought it was great that Spirit was kind of like helping me move through my grudge that I had against Spirit for telling me in 2017 that I would be moving towards marriage soon. And then kind of like me questioning Spirit and getting them to tell me who it was. And I kind of since then realized, okay, I think Spirit was kind of just giving me clues, and I don't think I narrowed it down to who it was. So the person I thought it was, I don't think that's who it was. But I think that person is kind of in the sphere of the person. And also, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter, because what the actual karma for me is, I had to learn, my karmic debt was to learn how to go through a disappointment like that and still get back up and not succumb and be poor me and say, oh, life fucked me and I've got dealt a bad hand and I might as well drink my life away. Like, nothing like that. It was, so maybe I did that in another lifetime, but this lifetime I was able to face something like that and show myself that I can come up even from something like that. That doesn't knock me. That doesn't make my life not worth living. I could live my whole life single and it would still be worth it to be here on earth. You know what I mean? Like, things could go not according to plan at all. And there's still enough in my days that make life fulfilling for me and worthwhile, and like that I feel blessed and like it's a gift to be alive. And yeah, I have a lot more that I want to accomplish, but even if I didn't accomplish anything else, even if this was it, if all I had done was spend the moments that I've had with the people that I loved, spend the moments that I had with people that I loved in the past, people that I spent time with, like when I was drinking and I was dancing and just like having fun, and or these days when I'm just appreciating nature or creating something or repairing something by sewing it. You know what I mean? Like, I I really appreciate being alive. And I feel like now the whole marriage thing wasn't necessarily about the marriage. It was about me showing myself that I could move through that even. So I feel like it happened how it was supposed to, you know? Or at least the version that happened is completely, it's not invalid. You know what I mean? It's, I salvaged it for something great for myself, which, you know, it feels good to know that I will not give up on myself, you know? And that's in contrast to what I felt like for like age 15 to 40. You know? So it feels good. The contrast is good. And then when you look at it like that, you kind of got to say, oh, well, I wouldn't have known how good this is, how good this feels if I hadn't have had that chunk of time where I was like basically fighting for my life because I wanted to give up. You know, because I had that time where I was totally distraught with life and felt like I was in suffering and thought I needed to escape, because I had that time, that is why I know how good this time is and how that fuels my appreciation for what I have achieved and what life actually is, the potential of what life is. And it makes it just worthwhile for all that work I did, right? It wasn't just like I snapped my fingers or I wished it away or I said, oh, I deserve better, and made all those patterns of karma go away that I was living in up to the age of 40. No, I actually, like, if you picture, my energy was a big knot of traumas and misunderstandings and all this stuff. You know, I just took one string out at a time. That's what I've been doing for all these years. I just untangled my knots, and so worth it, you know, so worth it. So, you know, most recently, I think the wounding pattern that I just kind of moved through was a big anchor for me into this 3D, you know, so like moving through that is a big turning point for me. And, you know, probably no one would know it, right? From the outside, it probably just looks like whatever. She's doing the same thing she always does. That's fine, because it's not even for anyone else. I'm sharing it just, I don't know, because I'm talking. Because I felt like updating you guys. And, yeah. Because I don't know, I feel like that aliveness for life, you know? And that is in contrast to me having deliberately spent time in melancholy for a couple weeks. And that was hard to do. It was hard to make myself get there. I talked about that a little bit, but once I was there, it was like, ooh. And then when I knew it was time to come out of it, I started taking steps up. And as I took steps up out of the melancholy is when kind of all the realizations came, right? Because they weren't going to come when I was wallowing. So I didn't have to wallow very long before I started taking myself up. I just had to go in deep enough, because that was a very devastated kind of feeling that I had as a child. So I had to go into those depths of feelings to get her out, to say, hey, I'm here and I'm willing to come down here in this dark place for you. I'm here for you. You got me. I got your back. Yeah. So that's that. I don't know what I'm gonna, like, I had some projects that I was working on, and Spirit kind of told me, like, hey, just, you know, do one thing at a time. You got some time here. You're a little bit ahead of schedule. I'm like, oh. So play a little bit more and get things balanced out in your daily routines and things like that. And today my plans got canceled, so I had a little bit of extra time. So I found myself here for a minute, but I don't know when I'll be back, because the project that I had in mind, I don't know if I'm going to even start it. I might do some readings, I might do some cards again, but I'm not sure. But in the meantime, my channel, this YouTube channel that you are finding me on here now, the whole channel is an oracle. So you can look at all the videos I've posted, the uploads over the years, and use your own intuition and decide which video has a message for you. They're all timeless messages, and you can utilize my channel that way if you are here looking for a reflection, something to give you some information to reflect on, or another point of view, or whatever it may be. So that's that for now. Who knows what's next, but I'm here for it. Well, I'm here now, and I'll be there for it when it's time.